All right, all right. I'm not sure if we're live here yet. Just finishing getting set up here. Bear with me for just a second. Hopefully this is all going to work correctly. Got to pardon my computer for being really, really slow here tonight. All right, so if you guys are seeing this live, I'm just getting set up, having some technical slowdowns here, but our topic for the night is going to be parental alienation. Today is International Parental Alienation Day, and my guest tonight is going to be Ronan Wrayth from A Place for Father. He's working up in Whatcom County, doing a lot of the same type of work that I do, and if I can get him the link, I'll get him on here shortly as well to join us. I think I'm already streaming here, but I'd like to get Ronan on with us. So I'm just waiting for my computer, which is being really, really slow, to respond so I can get Ronan in. But I hope everybody is having a great day tonight. This is there have been live streams all day with a lot of folks from across the country that are doing live streams in honor of Parental Alienation Day, talking about some of the different issues that many parents face when they go through child custody cases in family court, and often when CPS or the foster care system gets involved. A lot of times parents become alienated from their children, and it can be devastating to that parent, and it also can be very devastating to that child. And so we're going to get some different perspectives tonight. Send this message here. Hopefully we'll get Ronan on here really soon. Sorry about the technical delays. I really need a better computer to do this, but hopefully we'll get him on here really soon. So at any rate, parental alienation. There's a lot of folks that are probably going to be watching us tonight are very familiar with the issue already. It's not anything new. It's something that's been going on for a long, long time. There have been a lot of parents have expressed a lot of the trouble that they've had with going through the child custody system, with the family court system. And oh, there's Ronan. Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect.
Awesome. Okay, we got you online. We're streaming. Hopefully we won't get booted out. I was just starting to talk to our audience a little bit. Now I can't see the comments on Facebook right now, so I'll get us started, and then I'll try to figure out how I can view those. But I think you've got your second screen up so that you can see the comments and things. Okay. Awesome.
I don't know. I just got the gallery view right now. Let me see if I can find something.
Well, if you have your other computer and you've got the Facebook stream going, then you'll be able to see the comments that people make on the actual Facebook page. So I can probably switch over to it too. I'm worried about my computer lagging, so I may not be able to view those comments without it being cumbersome. So I'm just going to go ahead and let it stream. If you want to play around with that stuff a little bit, if you can get the actual stream up from the Facebook page on your other computer. I don't have that set up on mine right now, but then you'll be able to see the comments as they come through. And it's always good, when people come on, if we can, kind of read the comments and respond as people join in. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you. So most everybody that's watching tonight probably knows who I am. I'm Kyle Paskewitz. I'm the Executive Director of both Parentalink and Family Court Reform USA. I've been doing these live streams quite a bit, often on holidays and things. A lot of times we'll do a marathon live stream, and I usually participate in those. But we're starting to do some more of our own, and we've got our Zoom set up so that we can do more live streams, have more guests on, and start talking more about the work that we do, and trying to help parents that are going through some of these issues. So this is Ronan Wrayth. He's from Whatcom County, Washington, and you work for an organization called A Place for Father. And why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, like Kyle said, I'm Ronan Wrayth, founder of a father advocacy support group up here in Bellingham, Washington, Whatcom County. It's called A Place for Father. And this group basically is about, is in its, starting its third year of being in existence and helping support fathers through as much of a father's aspect of the divorce and custody issues that they face whenever, these things happen. A lot of times the divorces and everything are unexpected, at least from the father's point of view. Let's see. I'm going to be going back and forth sometimes to get the feed up. But basically, this group was started to help support fathers that are going through a divorce. Everything is, when it first starts out, it's pretty much ground zero. You're sort of, one day you have the job, the house, the kids, the dog, the car, and the next day you've got pretty much all you have on your body when you walk out. I walk out of like an arraignment, especially if there's any type of domestic violence allegations. As a lot of us already know, the father is the one that is taken away. So they have to go through an arraignment the next day, get let out on personal recognizance, but they're not allowed to go back and get their stuff. So what we try to do is, when fathers help us out, we often, listen to them and see what their story is and see what we can do in the way of helping them with resources, job leads, housing, even potentially clothing. We have a lot of resources up here in Whatcom County that we delve into to see what we can do to help fathers that are in these situations, to kind of give them a little bit more stability than they had 24 hours early. My wife, Harley, she helps me out a lot because she does pretty much a lot of the legal-esque stuff. We don't give legal advice, but we do offer support through the experience that myself have personally experienced through the court systems and through what other fathers in our group have had to go through. So a lot of times we will assist fathers when it comes to helping them fill out paperwork, helping them file. I just recently got my process server certification, so if need be, I can go and serve the papers to the other party for them. And doing a lot of the footwork to kind of make the financial burden, which is a big deal. I mean, a huge deal here in at least Washington State. The financial aspect is so huge that we try to do everything we can to have the fathers pull less money out of their pockets for stuff. We offer a lot of the current laws that are on the books that are helpful to fathers. We have some RCWs that we give them that they can use to make sure that the judges and everything do everything they can outside of saying, hey, she gets everything, but you can sit there and say, hey, wait a minute, according to this RCW, I'm allowed to at least get access to my children's stuff, to my children's medical records and their schooling and stuff like that. And things like that we kind of give them to basically make them feel like, okay, they're walking out there kind of going, what do I do? You're basically a zombie just because of the emotional aspect of the whole thing. You don't know where to go. And so we try to give them as much information as they want to be able to try to help get them to the point where, okay, I can do this, I can do this, I can't do that. And we try to kind of help maneuver them a little bit through. That is until they can get their own attorney. We do have, we have access to private investigators. We are currently working to get an attorney on board. We have guardian ad litems, and we try to do everything. We have links to the Washington State courts website, so that way you can download forms without having to go into the courts to, pay $280+ for a packet of that when all you really need is that much of it. So we're just trying to do everything we can to help out, help the father out that are going through these situations and don't have anywhere to go, because family and friends can only help so much, and then they have to go back to their lives, and then the father is still sort of going, well, who do I turn to now? And that's where, when I was going through my journey through all of this, I was really finding it hard to have or see any type of support groups for fathers that are going through this stuff. And then finally, after losing my son to parental alienation in 2017, that's when I just kind of said, you know what, screw it. I'm going to start doing this stuff because I don't see anybody else doing anything to do it. So we started this, and up to date, we've helped about at least 45 fathers with just whether it's a simple call on the phone and a couple of questions answered as to who to go to talk to, and referring them to people, to basically sitting down with them face to face, having a meeting, talking to them. I handle the emotional aspect of this because I've been through it. I know exactly what their mindsets are. So, my wife and I, we basically team together and do what we can to help these fathers. Now, Nathan McCartney, he is our Skagit County, Island County associate, and he often refers people to us and vice versa. And he basically does a lot of one of the projects that we've been working on with Jennifer Moles, which has been kind of put on the back burner for the time being, is to try to get some type of court watchers thing going, where basically we have volunteers going in and assessing the way the judge is responsive, whether the attorneys are being fair, whether there's any bias on either side, if the judge is being blatantly biased. We're trying to get something like that set up to where we can get that going and let the judges and the courts know that there are people that are watching them that are going to hold them accountable. So,
absolutely.
That's a few things that, a few of the projects that we have that, Kyle and I in the past have talked about doing, just with a lot of the stuff with the coronavirus and everything else, plus with our caseload, we're basically, we're not charging for services. We're basically doing this out of, fairness and stuff like that. And hey, if they give us a donation to help with supplies like toner ink, stuff like that to kind of help keep this thing going, great. But we're not going to ask them for money.
Yeah, you guys do great work, and I appreciate you taking the time to, kind of explain to our audience what it is that you do. One of the things that we identified really a couple of years ago was that we need more organizations that are kind of the boots on the ground, that are going to be the direct support for the families that are going through these things. When I first founded Family Court Reform USA, my focus was on legislation. I said, well, these laws, they aren't protecting us. They're not following the laws in some cases, and in other cases, the laws just need to be adjusted so that they're more clear, that both parents should have equal access to their kids, that that should be upheld in court. And that was way back before I understood half of what I understand now. But my focus was on the legislation. As time went on, I started to realize, well, that is an important part of it, but that's the long-term strategy. These laws weren't created overnight, and they're not going to change overnight. And sometimes it takes many, many years to actually get that legislative change. And sometimes you might get some change and then it'll get rolled back. And so when I became chairman of Parentalink and started focusing more on, what is it that we can do for direct support for families, we started taking on a similar role to what you guys are doing. We're providing direct support to families. We have our Facebook group, and we're focusing on Washington right now. We'd like to eventually expand some of that direct support out into some other states as well. But with our family support group, people can join our Facebook page and our Facebook group and come in there, and they can ask questions. And if it's something of a sensitive nature where they don't want to share the details of their case and identify themselves, they can PM that message to one of our admins, and then we can post it anonymously. That way they can go in the group. they can see what the answers are to their questions, but they don't necessarily have to reveal information, personal information about their case if they're worried about maybe the other parent or the lawyer or somebody might find out. It's a way that they can get some information and still do it safely and anonymously. And we'll work with parents directly, through private messaging and phone call and video chat if we have to try to help them out. So, we're on a very similar mission, and there's a lot of folks across the country, I think, that have realized how much this is needed. And there's never enough. There's never enough funding. There's never enough volunteers. There's never enough people that are willing just to give their time and of themselves in order to help these families that are going through these things. So I think that's a really good synopsis of kind of what you're doing, what we're doing. We've got some plans to work together here in the state of Washington. I know that you're kind of focused on primarily fathers and primarily in the Whatcom County area, as well as some of the surrounding counties. And that's an excellent start. I know that you'd like to expand the work that you do as well, and are always looking for volunteers. But I had a few questions I wanted to ask of you. As you were talking, I was just thinking of a few things that some people might want to know more about. So, one of the big ones is domestic violence. So, that's a topic that often comes up in a high conflict family court case, is domestic violence. Is there domestic violence involved? And that always becomes a very, very heated issue between a lot of folks, because obviously we want to protect the children and both parents from domestic violence occurring. It's really important that they have protection. If they're in danger in some way, they should be protected. I think most people agree with that. There's very few people that are going to come out and say, that we should not protect women from domestic violence, that we shouldn't protect men and children from domestic violence. In your experience, what can you tell me about the experience as a father who's been through this, and as an advocate who's worked with other fathers specifically? I don't want to make it too much of a gender issue, but I know that you focus on fathers. So what can you tell us about that experience and some of the issues that we run into?
Okay, let's see. In my personal experience, I got taken to jail because of a call of domestic violence. And the thing is, the domestic violence, 4th degree domestic violence, is vague enough to where all they have to do is feel threatened and they can call, and then you end up getting taken away. And in my experience, there's been fathers that I've talked to where the wife will just call and say, he's yelling at me. Well, that falls under feeling threatened. And when there's nothing, the argument is not even something big, but it often gets used as like the trigger. Their way out. They want out of the relationship, but they don't have the balls, for lack of a better term, to be adult about it. And it's basically, it's like, I want out. I'm done with this relationship, no matter what the underlying problem is. Instead of trying to work it out or something like that, they'll an argument will get started, things will get heated, and then suddenly a call, domestic violence, and that's enough for 4th degree domestic violence to be taken away just by arguing. And I've heard that on many occasions from many different fathers where they would talk, and it's like, I don't know how it started. And I've even had fathers saying, yeah, we were both in a bad mood, we were both at each other, and then she called. Even though, and that's the one thing that I think has got to be clarified, because without being abused in the way of trying to get instigate a divorce and get things going by saying he was violent, he's got a 4th degree domestic violence on his record. Judge looks at the father and he's like, it wasn't as bad as she's making it out to be. Oh, he's downplaying it. Okay, well, you are going to get the protection order. We're going to err on the side of caution and give you the protection order. You're going to go through anger management and domestic violence classes, and you're going to be doing drug and alcohol sharing, classes, even if there's nothing involved. So with that being said, that's how bad the court's error on the side of caution is, that you have to go through and do a whole slew of classes, which is taking the money out of your pocket, and you have to do these things. They're mandatory. You have to pay for them. Otherwise, you have to start at the beginning again. On top of trying to get an attorney, a place to stay, hopefully keep your job. I mean, that's where, that's how the whole thing just starts to kind of cascade by somebody blowing an argument or a disagreement completely out of the blue.
Well, and you hit the nail on the head. I've heard this a lot in so many different cases where a father will feel like he was provoked to the point where, this will go on for a long period of time. They'll be fighting, they'll be arguing until the one time that he goes a little bit too far, that he screams a little bit too loud, or, somebody feels like, okay, well, that was the time you went too far there, and now this can be used against you. And I've heard that so many times. And one thing that I'm really, really curious about is some of the guidelines actually changed under and you may have heard this, but under the Department of Justice, I believe, is who defines what is considered intimate partner violence or domestic violence. They actually define this. And I remember looking at their website and looking at all these definitions of what is considered to be domestic violence. And one of the things that you brought up, under the previous guidelines, domestic violence used to be considered raising your voice. If you raise your voice at somebody, that can be considered an act of domestic violence. Now, it's my understanding that changed, and I want to say it was maybe 2018 or so, maybe 2017, new guidelines came out that actually rolled back some of those more, more broad definitions of what is considered domestic violence. And in my opinion, that's a good thing, because when we're thinking of violence, there's a lot of different ideas about what is considered to be intimate partner violence, what is considered to be domestic violence, what is considered to be threatening, and things like that. We can't have a definition that's so broad that any, what most people would consider to be pretty human errors. Somebody gets upset and they raise their voice. I mean, I raise my voice all the time. I'm not going to lie. If I get heated, I'm going to raise my voice. It doesn't mean that I'm going to hurt somebody. I might hurt their feelings, but does that mean that I shouldn't have access to my children for the next 18 years? I don't think so. And that's the thing, is this, with this really broad definition of domestic violence, it's been abused to the point where anybody can come in, they can say something without evidence, as you said, it's presumed to be true. And regardless of whether it was true or not, the definition has just become so broad that suddenly they're taking all of this action against you as if you committed a crime, when they haven't even proven that you've committed a crime to begin with. And even if they had proof that you yelled, is yelling a crime? And so, we get into all these gray areas that allow a fundamental violation of parental rights. And that's what really, that's one of the biggest problems that we run into, is the court is not looking at the right to parenthood as being a fundamental right, even though the U.S. Supreme Court has decided over and over and over again that, that the rights of a parent are protected over the interest of the state, or this best interest determination. So many different cases have come out that have said, unless you can prove that a parent is unfit in some way, they have a right to make decisions for their children. However, both parents aren't treated equally. So we run into a lot of different issues there. But yeah, I think what you've brought up some really, really good insight into, some of the things that fathers go through. Have you noticed any change over time with some of these new guidelines? Have you talked to any fathers that have said that they felt like it's changed at all over the years, or is it still pretty much as bad as it's always been?
It sounds like, well, in light of what you just said, just from the fathers that I've talked to, it's to them, it's still bad as it was. I mean, there's a whole lot of change in it. I mean, especially, with families that get back together, they split up and then they get back together after a domestic violence call was made and they resolve their issues. Then that's that one thing. The other parent, then it still has got that leverage on the other, where it's like you got a ding on your record now, so all I got to do is call it again.
Mm-hmm.
And then
now,
you're a repeat offender.
Yep, absolutely.
Say that, quote unquote, from a Snohomish County commissioner who said you have 2 domestic violences on your record, which I do, but you have 2 of them, you're a repeat offender.
Now it's two accusations. Was there ever a conviction?
Yes, because I did not know. I thought by explaining my side of it to the judge that they would weigh both sides of it, but it was like, no, that was 4th-degree domestic violence.
I think it's a common mistake that we think that if we go into the court and we tell the truth, that we're going to somehow be given the benefit of the doubt at that point, that, because we told the truth and because we explained, look, this is exactly how it happened, that they're going to treat us like human beings. And they're going to say, well, we understand when 2 people are going through a divorce or a custody case, they might not be real happy with each other. They may argue, they may have a disagreement. They probably don't like each other very much right now. So, this fighting and squabbling and things like that, it's pretty common. They deal with it all the time. And so we go in there with this expectation that they're going to treat us like human beings, that they're going to understand that relationships have these struggles. And if we come in and we come clean with, hey, this is what happened, this was the situation, that they're going to say, okay, well, we understand, things happen. Let's create a resolution that everybody can move forward. We don't go in there expecting that means that we're going to lose all rights to our child. And there's this expectation, which I find really, really interesting, is that everybody's a liar. So that if you come and you say, like, okay, well, I raised my voice, but I never laid a hand on her, they automatically think, oh, well, he's lying. Clearly, if she's saying that he did this, if he's saying that he raised his voice, it must have gone further than that. It must have been, an act of physical violence. And they just assume, they assume that everybody's downplaying everything, and they don't think that somebody has the ability. And I find that I deal with a lot of fathers just like you do. And I find that, a lot of times we're pretty forthcoming about what happened. If you're a good man, you're going to say, look, I made some mistakes. We didn't get along. We fought, this incident happened or that incident happened. As a man, I feel like it's relieving to come clean. If we feel like, okay, I made some mistakes, this didn't go the way that I wanted it to. We feel like we just want to tell our side of the story and we want a fair judgment, but we don't get that. And that's really a big heart of the problem.
Yeah, because they see that even if you say that it wasn't as bad as it sounded, that in the court's eyes is an admission of guilt. And the prosecutor's looking for a win. Well, Your Honor, he basically said that these events happened. They may not have happened in the way that it was told to the court, but these events happened because they both admit to this particular incident happening. And that was what blew me away, was that the fact that, wait a second, yes, there was an argument, but no, there was no throwing around, kicking, slamming heads on the wall, stuff. None of that. I mean, in my case, when my ex-wife and I, we'd been arguing for about 3 days just over stuff I did not I didn't even know where it was coming from. I told her my mistake was telling her to go take a walk, which she had already had her purse and everything. And when I woke up after I came home from work, I woke up to yelling and screaming. So I get up to see what had happened, and she looked like she was caught, texting somebody or emailing somebody, because she already had her purse on. But she turns around and starts yelling at me, and I'm kind of going, why are we still doing this? Why are we still arguing about this stuff? I mean, every day for the last 3 days, I've come home from work and you're pissed off about something. You know what? Anger management classes I took when I was younger said that to leave the situation, go take a walk, calm down. Your turn to go take a walk. So walked her to the door. And then that was when she ran and called the cops. Said I was drunk and belligerent, beat her up one side and down the other, grabbed her arm until it hurt, if I remember the quote correctly. But that was the only thing. The grabbing of her arm was the only thing that matched up in both of our stories. And when I said that was what I did, the rest of the stuff, no, I didn't, according to the police report, because I got arrested that night. She had no marks on her body. She refused medical treatment. She was given information to go to the domestic violence center. So coming back to me, they come to check on the place. No drugs or alcohol of evidence. I was compliant with them. I even asked myself, can you do me a favor? Let me get dressed first. They let me get dressed. Sorry. They let me get dressed. They said he was compliant. He was coherent. No breathalyzer, no UA, no blood test. And yet I still had to go through and do all of these classes.
Mm-hmm.
The judge, quote unquote, when I mentioned, I said, according to the police report, Your Honor, there was nothing there. What she is saying is fabricated. And he said, the police don't always do their job. And I was just I was flabbergasted. I was like, things right here that shows that I was not doing everything that she says.
Well, and a lot of times, we all know that, we're considered guilty until proven innocent. In this particular situation, if an accusation is made against us, there are a lot of people who will just assume, hey, where there's smoke, there's fire. There has to be something. If she's saying that it's this way, it has to be something. And so that kind of goes to the bias. But one of the things that I've heard a lot, and I didn't personally experience, but it sounds like you've experienced some of this, is where a report will be made, accusations will be made, then the court will take it upon themselves to say, okay, well, you have to go to an anger management class. You need to go to a domestic violence class. You need to go for some sort of counseling or assessment. And I've heard this from a lot of fathers where they say, okay, well, this accusation was made against me. It wasn't true, but then they assigned me to go to this class anyway. Like you said, that's money out of their pocket, but it's also adding insult to injury in a lot of ways, because if nothing happened, but yet they're giving you these consequences as if something happened, they're kind of, they're prosecuting you for something that didn't happen to begin with. There's the argument that, okay, well, anybody can possibly benefit from these classes. So, let's just err on the side of caution. We'll say, okay, well, there's been some conflict. She's saying that there's a problem. He's saying that there isn't, but let's go ahead and just put him through the classes. Not saying I agree with it, but let's just say that we're going with that particular line of thinking. Then what happens, from what I've heard, is that the father will be put into that class and he won't be allowed to be released from the class until he admits what he did. And this admission is based on the accusation, that it says, okay, if you were accused of this, you can now not be released from this program until you admit that you did that. And so it's kind of an entrapment scenario where you've taken a guy, you haven't prosecuted him, you haven't tried him for a crime, you've just assumed that he's guilty of a crime, you've sentenced him for that crime to go to anger management classes, to go to this class, or to go to this counseling. And then this counselor, the terms of your release are now based on you to admitting something that you contend never actually happened. And I've heard that, I don't know if that's what happened in your case, but I've heard this from a lot of fathers that you know, they put you in this situation where you've got to keep on going back to those classes until it's almost like a plea bargain, where you plea bargain guilty in order to be released. In order to regain your freedom, you have to plea bargain and say that you committed a crime, even if you contend that you didn't do it.
Right. And that's exactly was the case. You know, in my case, I was just, it's to me, it's not surprising when there are so many fathers out there that are angry because they have to do something that they should not have to do, and yet they're being forced to do it. I mean, going to the DV classes, going to the anger management classes, I was pissed. And there were a lot of other fathers who were pissed off too, because they're just like, why do I have to do this if it did not happen? Now, granted, you know, everyone that's in prison says that they're innocent. I got that. But yet at the same time, you're seeing a lot of fathers that are just like, I don't understand why I have to do this. And I was in the same boat. I was, you know, and I was very angry about it. And I made it known that I was angry about it, because I said that I'm doing something that I should not be doing. Because according to the law, I made a mistake, but it's not something where I have 9, 10, 12 different the same charges of domestic violence.
Right. Right.
And in total transparency, these were, you know, the two incidences that I had were about 8 years apart, but they were with the same woman.
Mm-hmm.
And so I already had one on me, and it was when she was going through postpartum depression, and that could be really trying when you're going, you know, you're trying to raise a kid and you have a wife that's going through postpartum. Mm-hmm. It was very emotionally unstable at that time, and we got into an argument. That was my first DV. Second one was in 2013. The first one was in 2009. The second one was in 2013. No, I'm sorry. I'm getting my dates mixed up. 2004 was the first DV. It was just about to turn 9 in 2013. So that's, you know, and those were the two DVs that I had. And both times I went through the anger management, drug and alcohol. Second time I had to go through it, I was really, really pissed, because I'm like, this is getting way blown out of proportion. Even with the fact that she doctored the evidence of her DV and she showed up after the initial 24-hour period. That was still cool with the judge. He's still fine with that. Because he's just like, well, hey, we got the pictures right here. I called her out on it, and I said, why are you smirking in these pictures? Her response was, well, the photographer made a joke. And I'm like, no, that was a smirk of somebody who's, I'm getting away with it, and he's going to go down for it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That was, you know, that was something that was really unbelievable in my eyes, that I was the only one that seemed to see it. No one else did. Even when I pointed it out to him. Oh, well, she said the photographer made a joke. And I'm just sitting there going, oh.
Well, I mean, we know our partners better than anybody. When you've been dating somebody for a few years, you know every expression, you know their mannerisms, you know their behaviors, and you can, I mean, sometimes you can just read it, you know, and that's the thing. Yeah, and another thing that really bothers me in particular is, you know, there are situations where, you know, okay, either an accusation is made and there was no domestic violence whatsoever. It's clearly just a made up accusation, you know, and in my opinion, I don't believe in this definition of yelling being domestic violence. I just flat out, you know, I don't agree with that. And you know, if a lawyer wants to say, oh, well, this is the definition of it, I just, you know, fortunately I'm not on trial for that, but I just flat out, to me, that just doesn't make sense. I mean, marital couples, they They fight sometimes. Sometimes they yell at each other. I mean, is that really violent? Is that, this whole idea that words are violent? I mean, if you're really hurt that much by somebody's words, then maybe you just shouldn't be with them. I mean, I just think that that's extreme. And then you've got the situations where there's a one-time incident. Somebody gets pushed, or somebody gets grabbed by the arm, or something, that's physical, but not extreme. It got a little bit out of control. It got a little bit heated. When you're intimate with somebody, sometimes you're very physical with that person too. Sometimes when you're intimate and physical, sometimes it's, it can be rough. That's how some people relate when they're passionate with one another, and then somebody could take that and say, well, I just don't understand that. That's just not how two people behave. And well, you're not looking in everybody's bedroom to see how people interact and behave together to be able to make that judgment.
Exactly. I mean, it's really hard when, when things start to get heated and there's, a difference of opinion that turns into a debate that then turns into an argument that gets heated. It's, a lot of times, people don't know what to expect or how they're going to react in that situation, because they're just bouncing off of what's being, they're just having what's thrown at them, bouncing off of them, and then they're firing back. It's
yep.
Things where, in the heat of the moment, you do something stupid. Not saying that violence is a good thing. I'm just saying that there's times where you're so adamant on getting your point across or your defense to say, hey, look, it wasn't like this, especially if you're being accused of something. You get on the defensive.
Yeah.
And so what happens then is like, you don't know what to expect or what the next words are going to be coming out of their mouth. And then, and then the next thing you know, it starts getting personal. And then you start, getting berated for, your job, the way you dress, how you react with her friends or with the other parents' friends. All of a sudden it starts getting personal, and then it gets to a point where you get to that threshold where something happens. I'm just glad to say I'm no longer in that situation. I'm glad to say, because I didn't realize at the time I was going through it, this was what was happening.
Well, and that's one of the things that gets discounted a lot when they talk about domestic violence. They never seem to want to look at the emotional and the psychological manipulation and the words that are sometimes used towards the man, the actions that are taken towards the man. They never seem to look at that as a factor. So a man can be, emotionally manipulated and abused by the definition of domestic violence. Coercive control, all of these different methods of abuse can be used against a man for years. And the 1 minute that he raises his voice, he's the one that's guilty of domestic violence all of a sudden. And that's one of the problems with the way that our DV system has always looked at it. And that's a real problem. And I know that from personal experience. And I know that there's a lot of other men out there that would agree to the same thing. And I think that there's a lot of women out there that know how abusive and manipulative other women can be. And it happens. It happens in relationships a lot. And the fact that, somebody's, you put a man in that situation for a long time, the relationship starts to dissolve. And then all of a sudden, not only has he been dealing with that, now suddenly he's dealing with potentially losing his house, losing his cars, maybe losing his job if accusations are being made against him, and losing access to his kids. I mean, that's a perfect storm to really, really harm a person. Whereas, the ultimate goal here should be, hey, how do we take this family that's in crisis and make it better so that both of those parents can get to a point where they're healing from this broken relationship so that the children can benefit from having two fit, happy, healthy, healed parents. Our family court system does not do that. They don't do any of that. They make it worse.
Exactly, because of the adversarial style of our court system. Basically, we have a divorce. Let's see what we can do. Make this, make as much money out of it as possible and drag it out for as long as possible. And I mean, it's one of those things where since 2013, when my journey started, looking into things, researching laws, and basically, doing my case by myself, I did everything to the best of my abilities at the time. And even when you're going into, deal with, the relocation without notification. In my case, I had at least 3 different times where I tried to go down to the Snohomish County Courthouse and say, hey, she moved. She took my son. I don't know where she's at. I have an emergency custody order, and I have letters from our therapist, because my son and I were doing reunification therapy to reunite after nearly 3 years of being apart. So I'm trying to present this to the judge. And in one instance, after $300 was spent driving back and forth between Snohomish County and Whatcom County to do this, the judge said, you don't have all the paperwork. Go see the facilitator. Facilitator was like, you've got everything you need. I don't know what the judge is talking about. So then back over to the court. Facilitator says everything's here. He's like, no, it's not. Well, what am I missing? I can't tell you that, because that'd be giving you legal advice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just, it's things like that where I'm doing the best for my son, because if she's able to up and leave without telling me, I found out through her mother that she left. Of all people, the mother-in-law calling to tell me she moved. So it was just basically, it was such, dealing with the family courts and stuff, it was such an up and down ride where, I'm going in there thinking I got everything taken care of, only to have the judge say, continue.
Yeah.
Go back in. You don't have the paperwork. Okay, I've got all this contempt paperwork, got all this evidence, everything right here.
It just drags and drags for years and years. But we've talked a lot about what we go through as dads, as men in these relationships and in the court system, and it's really easy, I think, to segue into a lot of that. And it's important that we talk about it, because I don't think we talk about it enough. I mean, my organization tries to, in particular, because we help non-custodial parents, we try to help a lot of the moms just as much as we try to help the dads. And so we don't always talk about these things, because it's not Parentalink isn't a male specific group. So I actually appreciate having the time to talk to you a little bit about some of this stuff, because a lot of times we avoid talking about, we don't want to create any kind of gender division. We definitely don't want the moms to feel like this is just about dads. So we don't get to talk about that a lot.
Well, if I can interject here real quick.
Yeah.
If you go ahead and Google women's support services, and then go through and Google men's support services, tell me how many men's services would you find on Google?
Very good point. Very good point. And
that's why we specifically work with fathers, because out of the 10,000 hits in 0.0123 seconds on Google, along with another extra 4,000 pages, you'll find maybe 1,000, 1,500 pages for men's groups, which is why we understand that both sides of the spectrum get shafted in family courts, but seeing that there's more of a need to help fathers, because fathers have been pushed to the side so much that they don't know what it is that they can do, because being fathers, being men, we want to basically, I'll say 75%, just to throw a rough number out there. 75% of the fathers out there want what's best for the family, wants what's best for the kid, wants what's best for their wife. And they are in this for the long run. Because
we also tend to try to solve things ourselves. A lot of times we don't know about there being support out there, but we also don't seek it out. And that's one of the things, and it's a really good point, because I am one of the co-champions of the Interagency Fatherhood Council. And that's one of the things that we do, is we focus specifically on services for fathers. We support organizations like yours and try to bring these different organizations together so that we can have some father specific services. So you're absolutely right. And point taken, you know, we definitely need to have some more father specific services. We need to make sure that the men that are going through these things do feel like there's a place that they can turn, that they're going to be able to get help, because that is something that's been lacking significantly for a long time. But one of the things that I wanted to segue a little bit back into was today's International Parental Alienation Day. And that was one of the things that I wanted to make sure that we took some time talking about. And I usually do about an hour, but we can go over a little bit longer if you've got time.
Yep.
I don't think we're held to any specific timetable here tonight at all, so we can go over for a little while. But I did want to make sure that we talked about that a little bit. So I explained a little bit at the beginning of the video, this live stream, what parental alienation is. There's different definitions. There's, you know, Dr. Childress has done a lot of work on what he calls attachment-based parental alienation, AB-PA, which is essentially it's a reaction that a child has because of the scenario that they're being put in. When you have these two parents that are in an adversarial position, oftentimes the primary parent becomes the one that the child by necessity becomes more dependent on. They're the one that the child wants to start to please because that's the one who they're spending the most of their time with. That's the one that the courts are favoring them having time with. That's the one that's kind of getting the preferential treatment a lot of times. And so if that parent doesn't support the relationship with the other parent, and that parent is speaking negatively of the other parent, that child has a tendency to naturally want to make that parent happy. And when they reject the other parent, whether it's on purpose or not, that tends to create a satisfaction or a positive reaction in the alienating parent, or what Dr. Childress calls the pathological parent, or the pathogen, which a lot of people find to be pretty extreme words, but that's the words that are being used in that particular kind of theory. There's other theories and ways of describing it. I know some good friends of mine like to call it parental gatekeeping, which is the action of the parent that is they want to be the one in control. They are gatekeeping everything that child does with the other parent. And so they're creating this scenario where the child can only spend time with the other parent if they say it's okay. The child can only love the other parent if they say it's okay. It's this form of what they call gatekeeping, and it's emotional abuse. It's an emotional manipulation of the child. It's considered to be child abuse, and even by the DSM-IV manual, they can define these manipulations that alienating parent is. They can actually define that as child abuse in the clinical terms, if that's what's happening, and they can identify the markers for it. So that's kind of my understanding of parental alienation, but maybe you can add a little bit to that. Maybe you can tell me a little bit of your own experience, or some of the experience that other fathers that you work with have had.
Well, I know with this, the stay in shelter place, the COVID-19 pandemic, all the stuff that's going on, there are a lot of fathers out there who aren't seeing their kids because of the health issues. The other parent is basically saying, for the health of my children, I'm keeping them home, and you're not going to be able to see them until after this is over, or until you have a doctor's note stating that you're free and clear, that you don't have COVID-19, and that you're not going to give it to the kids. And that's, that is something that, just from some of the other pages that I follow, I see and I hear a lot about that, because, they're kind of like going, well, I'm supposed to see my kid, but yet you're keeping them from me, and you are not letting me see them because you're claiming that their health is at risk. Well, Governor Inslee stated that if there is a parenting plan in place, stick to the parenting plan. Well, there are still mothers out there that are not doing it. And then, with it, in my situation, I mean, I know that there's going to be a lot of contempt charges flying here as soon as this, as soon as these restrictions, are lifted. There's going to be a lot of contempt filings for fathers who haven't, non-custodial parents that did not get to see their time and with their kids, because they're going to be automatically demanding wake up time, contempt charges, and stuff like that. How many of those are actually going to stick? Because the custodial parent says that, I don't want them bringing this back to the house. And
that's a good question.
That's going to be another head against the brick wall moment for these parents that are going to be going, well, I am doing everything that I am told to do. I am yet not seeing my kids. And, that's the one thing that is, it really bothers me, because when are these types of people going to understand that, hey, we're adults. We can't keep using the kid as a weapon or a messenger or a go-between or pumping them for information. It's just frustrating, because now with this being done, I usually call it state-sanctioned alienation is what I call it. Because before this COVID-19 thing, some of my insight in the parental alienation is I have got a box. This is just a part of it. With all the stuff, emails, texts, transcribed phone records, of everything, of my ex saying one thing and then doing something. The worst of it was when she moved without notification down to Thurston County, and I'm up here in Wacom, so our middle ground was Northgate Mall. The only time she would bring him once a month, and that was at the beginning of the month when she got her child support. And then the next visit, she'd have some excuse. He's sick. We're at the hospital. We couldn't do it because of this. I had no gas money. All sorts of excuses. And that time apart from my son, I never got made up, because the courts went, well, he's got documentation stating he's at the hospital for a heart condition. But then a month later, her heart condition's fine. In the meantime, I'm talking to our therapist, and she is saying that she is, these are alienating behaviors. And then I started researching more into parental alienation, so seeing more of what she was doing, how she was saying it, the things that she would pull. And I would bring this up to the judge, and the judge would say, well, she was at the doctor's office. She's got a doctor's note. Her son had an ear infection. Here's a doctor's note. And I'm kind of going, why is this stuff not told to me until after I've driven down there to pick him up? And then I'm calling for an hour saying, where are you? And everything goes straight to voicemail.
Now, how much time did you have with your child before the COVID-19 crisis, and how much do you have now? Has it changed?
It has changed. Yes, it has changed dramatically. The last time I saw my son was in December of 2017. I'm just going to say it. This is all documentation of an alleged rape charge that my son made against me. My ex, this is his whole CPS report, everything, which you can get through the Freedom of Information Act. Contact them, ask them for a public records request. It may take about a month or so before you get it. I had to wait 4 months because it was about 400 pages. They could only send 100 at a time. Basically, with the school contacted me and told me what he said. And my ex-wife has a tendency to throw rape allegations out at anybody. It was really sickening to me and angry at the same time to see that my son is following in her footsteps. Because suddenly when he said that, yeah, my dad raped me, boom, he's got people talking to him saying, is this true? And he knuckled under and said, no, it's not true. I was just mad when I said it.
So do you think, and you know, if you don't want to share details of your story, I understand. So let me know if I'm crossing the line with questions, because I didn't know all of this. But so do you think that she put him up to that, or are you saying that she had a history of making these false allegations? He heard it and started mimicking or mirroring her behaviors.
Her behavior is basically, she will sit there, and if you're not in the room, she'll go to the kids. Oh, you didn't know your dad did that to me? And then you come walking back in the room, and the kid's looking at you like, you know, what's wrong? Why is he acting weird? And her mother is in the same, her mother, his grandmother's the same type of person. If that person is not there to defend themselves, they will just fill his head with anything and everything. What I think happened personally is that he basically saw the reaction people got when she would say this stuff, and saw the attention that she received from it. And he went along with the same thing, saying, well, if I say this happened, I'll get all this attention. Well, funny part is, 4 months after I cut off ties with my son, I said, I'm stopping visitation, because I can no longer trust my son to be alone with me, especially if he's going back home and telling, you know, people this stuff. Because I know for a fact, in the court of public opinion, you're automatically guilty of any accusations. So basically,
well, I mean, if I hadn't heard these cases so many times, I think that I would tend to think the same way. I think the first time that I've ever heard somebody say that they were, you know, that they were accused of rape or child molestation or whatever it happens to be, I'm automatically, as a normal person that's never been through any of this kind of stuff, I'm thinking, well, shoot, did this guy do it? I mean, that doesn't happen to normal people. But I can't tell you how many times I've heard of people being accused of raping a child or raping their spouse, usually the woman, and them saying that it didn't happen and that it wasn't, you know, that this was a false allegation. It was made basically on the, you know, because of the child custody case. And this is absolutely not the first time that I've heard that the child themselves made the accusation against the parent. And right. I think you're absolutely right. People who haven't been through the systems that we have and haven't talked to as many parents as we have would automatically think, oh, well, a child can't say that unless there's some truth to it. Well, I've heard this enough that a child does make up these things. Children are not always honest. And right. that's the reality. I mean, anybody that has kids know that they make up stuff sometimes.
Yeah. And the thing is, if they only hear one side of the story, they don't know. Damn it. They only hear one side of the story. If they don't hear a countering, opinion or anything, or a different part of the story, they're going to take whatever they hear to be true.
Oh yeah. No, if your ex and the child were sitting here telling their story and you weren't here to explain your side of it, everybody on the planet would be like, oh my God, you are a demon. You need to be shot and buried.
The one meme I think is the greatest meme that I've ever seen is pedophile shot 33 times in the head, ruled a suicide. I had to laugh at that one because I'm thinking, if this would have like spread, I would not be where I'm at now, because I was seriously living in fear that all it would take is my ex to call my work, talk to HR, say what's going on, out the door.
I mean, it would not be unusual for, a group of guys to hear this story from a woman. The child confirms it, and they go and hunt that guy down without ever hearing his side of the story. It's a natural instinct, and within our society, that if somebody hears something like that, to automatically think he must have done it, we're going to go take care of this guy,
Right.
you know? And, you know, I mean, you know, when guys wind up getting convicted in prison, we all know what they do to child molesters in prison.
Exactly. You know? So getting a little further into this thing, through my CPS records that I got, I ended up finding out that 3 to 4 months later, after talking to the principal about this, and he said, we got it resolved, it's all good. 3 to 4 months later, grandma, in one of his counseling sessions, brings up the fact that I molested my son. Guess who's back in the crosshairs? Guess who's back under investigation? That was the only way I found out what was going on, because I mean, I was surprised when I got a call from Bellingham PD, Arlington PD, and CPS to tell me that this is what, you know, that I'm under investigation for this stuff. I just rolled my eyes. I said, bring it. You're not going to find anything. And they didn't eventually, even though some of the things that he said, he kind of, you know, downplayed the rape allegation into basically me being, him walking in on me being inappropriate. And then I get chastised by CPS, Bellingham PD, and Arlington PD. Well, maybe that wasn't the best decision for you to make at that time. And I went, are you being serious? I explained to him, just like I explained to you, how my ex is. I go, this did not happen. So for you to sit there and say that you don't think that that was the best choice that for me to make at the time, I'm just like, you know, edited. You know, I can't believe that you're sitting there basically, you know, assuming that I did this, but yet you're not going to charge me with anything. I mean, I've got the reports. I've got the CPS reports, the Arlington reports, the Bellingham PD reports. And the thing is, my ex even went so far as to take a computer that we had in our relationship, take it to the police, give it to the Arlington Police Department, and say, there's child porn on here. And I was like, I had a funny feeling she would try that. And it gets even better because she even made an allegation that there was a little girl on there that I was looking at pictures of. Well, that little girl she was mentioned happened to be her best friend who was sending my ex-wife pictures. And I'm sitting there going, I know exactly who you're talking about. And that's not
so wait a second. So she tried to, you're saying that she tried to set you up on child porn charges by taking your laptop and getting pictures from her best friend and putting them on the laptop and saying that they were child porn.
No, basically these pictures were from before we split up.
Okay.
These were like pre-2013 photos. And this was happening in 2018, 2019. She has grown up quite a bit since then, but she was still sitting there saying that I was looking at pictures of little girls and hoping that they were still on the old desktop computer we had. Because she was having them sent, they were sent to her, but she was trying to make it sound like I was the one that was having them sent to.
Right.
So I was just like, okay, got an explanation for that if they asked me. So basically, you know, knowing why and how what my son is living with and what I was living with, you know, I see how it came about that he ended up doing this, because he's basically been told all of these things against me, despite the fact I've shown him to the contrary, that what I've been accused of, I never did. I even told my son one time, because he was asking me all sorts of absurd questions. He's like, Mom said this, Mom said that. And I'm like, look, ask your mom 2 words, prove it. If she can't provide any documentation or pictures, it didn't happen.
So how do you think that this is impacting your son? I mean, if, you know, and I'm, obviously I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt, and I'm hearing your side of the story, and I'm assuming that these things are untrue. How do you think that this impacts your child? Obviously, you don't have a relationship with him at this point. What do you think the long-term impacts are going to be?
I don't know. I don't think about that, to be honest. If there's a time in the future where my son comes to me and says, "Hey, I'm sorry," to be honest, I don't know if I would really believe him, because he made the choice. He was old enough to know the difference between right and wrong.
How old was he?
He was 13 at the time. He made the allegation. So he knows the difference between right and wrong. He knows truth and a lie. And sad to say, he knows that lies will get him attention and sympathy. And that was a complete 180 from the way I was trying to raise my son throughout all of it.
So she's managed to essentially turn your son completely against you, but then also it got to it's so extreme at this point that you guys don't even have a relationship at this point.
No, we don't. We haven't. He bragged about his ability to sneak around his mom and email me and stuff like that. Well, that was just words. He never once sent me a call, email, or anything to apologize or to explain his side of things. It was just basically cut and dried, no contact whatsoever. And that took me a little while. And there's still sometimes that I have challenges, trying not to get upset about it, wondering, did I do the right thing? Was I too harsh? But I realized that I had to protect myself.
I mean, how can you not be upset at something like that? That is not something that the average person would have to deal with, having their own child make an accusation like that and then having to break off their relationship because of it. I mean, that's aside from, the repercussions of the relationship breaking down. This is the relationship between you and your son breaking down as well.
Yep. And how could I not be upset about it? Like I was saying, I still get upset about it. I ran across an article last night I was reading, and it was basically just the clickbait stuff. 15 stories of people who disown their kids. And then that kind of got me to thinking, am I really an alienated parent, or did I just disown my son? And so I've been kind of having that little bit of, mental back and forth, because, I didn't want to be presenting as an alienated parent if I wasn't, because of my actions. But then I realized, no, I am an alienated father. But
there's no word. That is alienation. There's no worst rejection of a parent. That's not just rejection of a parent. That's accusing the parent of a crime. It doesn't get any worse than that. And not even just a simple crime, but a crime against a child. I mean, it doesn't. I can't imagine an alienation scenario much more extreme than that.
I can't either. I was shocked. I could not believe that it actually got to this point. Because I thought a son needs to have his father in his life, just like a son needs to have a mother in their life. Just because the two adults don't get along does not mean the child is suddenly a tug-of-war toy between two dogs. And that was something I was trying to convey through a lot of, when I was able to keep my wits about me. I was always trying to convey the fact that, it's me and her are over, but me and him are not. She didn't like that, because she took that as a threat, as basically he's going to eventually find out what he's going to basically turn him against me. was what her thinking was. And I was just basically like, I just want to see my son. That's all I want. But it turned into a whole, how can we get him out of our life? And I've got recordings of my son leaving messages saying, "Don't be coming around here. Leave us alone."
That's classic attachment-based parental alienation. I mean, that is the definition of it. That is exactly why we have this international day that we have today, because you are not alone in, this scenario. This happens to so many parents. And I keep, and it's not just about what happens to us, but I mean, let me put myself in your son's shoes for a minute. Let's say that, that I was manipulated by a parent to such an extreme that I made an accusation like that against my other parent. 10 years from now, the guilt of knowing what he did and what he was manipulated into is gonna tear him apart.
But I look at it as, that's going to be his problem, because I did everything I could to prevent that and to do what was best by, do right by him. But he made the choice. And as harsh as it sounds, I made the right choice by having to walk away, because as he gets older and he ends up getting worse, I have to suddenly worry about, is this guy going to, is this kid going to do something to my dog? Is he going to do something to my wife? Is he going to damage the place? Is he going to start, causing more chaos in my life? What is he going to have to live through? And what kind of hell are we going to get put through if this keeps going? Because to me, it was not going to de-escalate anytime soon. It was just going to get worse and worse and worse and worse. And so I just went, I have to think about myself and those around me. And so that was why I decided to cut ties, because I'm not going to be subjecting myself or the people around me to more crap that we don't need to be dealing with, especially when we are not doing anything to deserve it in the first place. So,
well, it seems to me like, and I'm not a counselor or a psychologist or anything, but it seems to me that that's a defensive reaction at that point, where you're being attacked, by your own child, essentially. And, that attack is being, taken into the courtroom and into these agencies like CPS, where possible repercussions could be made against you. And, now you're in a different relationship now. There's repercussions for your current family situation, where, you have no ability to have any influence over your child to even get him help, through the situation and try to get him back to where he needs to be, where he starts to realize what it was that he did.
Exactly.
And what the long-term impacts of that are going to be, not on just him, but on you and just this pattern of behavior. If that behavior does get worse, I mean, he's going to have a lot of problems and potentially cause a lot of problems. And that's exactly why we need to protect these relationships, because as far as I'm concerned, that's a father's job. It's our job to make sure that our sons don't go down those paths, and that they don't get their minds all twisted up and do sick and hurtful things to people. Right.
And you know what his mother's excuse is going to be is because his father abandoned him. But in reality, he said that I can raise him good enough on my own. And I mean, his school is still sending me his grades and stuff. So it's like, I'm not, I see him struggling, but there's nothing I can do about it. And it's, that particular situation is why I started up a place for fathers, that was one of the big catalysts, was because who do I talk to about this? I don't know anybody that I can talk to about this stuff, about being accused of something I didn't do. I didn't have a sounding board. I didn't have any, anybody to, any group where I could sit there and tell them. I mean, this is the first time I've said really anything about this on such a public forum. I mean, I've had, a lot of friends who have been supportive and helpful through everything that I went through, who knew of me before and after. And there's a lot of the friends that were there before weren't there for me when all this stuff was going on, until I actually took the time, contacted them, provided proof, prove it, that what she was saying about me was not true. So getting back to, today, this whole group is basically based off of, and it's a catalyst from what happened in my past, because I don't want to see another father go through this. I don't want to see another father, ripped away from his kids without good cause. I want to see the courts to be able to go, okay, you know what? She's saying this, and this, but there's no evidence of it. Or he's saying this, and this, and there's no evidence of it. I want the courts to start looking more into things instead of going 5-minute cliff notes. Oh, okay, this happened, and they're going for bullet points, but they're missing the information between those bullet points. That could totally change the way the courts see the way these cases are done, and the outcomes can be a lot more fair and balanced if they have the time to be able to go through and have somebody with a fine-tooth comb go through stuff and say, okay, whoa, I've seen this pattern before. Cross-reference it with another case. Okay, am I seeing the same thing? Yes, I'm seeing the same thing here. Okay, we have, judge, according to this is the same thing that was said in this case, and this was this. There's a discrepancy between this and this. I had to point the discrepancies out in all the records in our court cases, but it just went in one ear, out the other.
Well, and that's what those of us that have been through this, and we've talked with enough parents and we've heard these stories, we know how it goes. We know how to look into these things and investigate them and figure out, what's going on and who's saying what. And it's not a surprise to us when we hear these things. It's not a shock, because this stuff does happen quite a bit. And these situations do get very, very complicated and convoluted and very, very difficult. But I appreciate you being so candid and sharing so much of your story. I didn't know that we were going to get this deep into some of these things, but I appreciate you doing that.
Do you want one more piece of the spiral down the rabbit hole?
Sure.
Thanks, Harley, for reminding me about this. My ex-wife's daughter, she lost custody of her daughter when she was 10 years old for the same allegations against her father. She had been telling me in our relationships from the beginning that she thought that her daughter's dad was messing with her. Well, finally it came to a point where something was said and we ended up going to court. Well, he was able to hire an attorney, and he ended up putting her on a polygraph, and she failed the polygraph test, resulting in her losing custody of her 10-year-old daughter at the time. Her daughter is now 23, living in Utah with her dad, does not want any contact with her mother.
Wow. Yeah. And I've heard of cases like that as well, where a child, it's really interesting. I can think of some very specific cases where a child went through the same thing, where one of the parents essentially, coached them to help support some allegations they were making against the other parent. They did it, and that parent got in trouble. And then years later, when the child got old enough and figured it out, they didn't want to have anything to do with the alienating parent that did it, and were able to reunite with their the parent that they basically turned on. So if there's any thing that I can hope and pray for, it's that your son will at some point realize what it is that he's done, and maybe start to try to change that, and I think at some point he's going to want to rebuild his relationship with you.
Well, when that time comes, the time comes. In the meantime, I'm focusing on this to try to help out other fathers. And like I said, because of all of this stuff, this is why this group was formed. Because, you know, going through the whole process, especially by yourself, is daunting. It's such a David and Goliath scenario, except Goliath is like Empire State Building size. And you're just kind of going, how am I going to get past all this?
Yeah.
Like I said, with my emotional experience because of all this, I'm able to kind of, talk with them and say, hey, I went there. I know what you're going through. Here's what I did to get myself past it. This was who I turned to. Like I said earlier, job references, housing. We're looking for housing for people, single rooms for rent, stuff like that. If they, need a clean and sober place, we've got places that they can go to. All the temp agencies up here in Whatcom County are always willing to take somebody despite what they're going through. It is just a matter of trying to get yourself, back up on your feet and getting yourself thinking about yourself and working with yourself, because we were all bachelors before this stuff happened. We were all bachelors at one time. When something like this happens, you forget what it's like to even be a bachelor. Feeding yourself, taking care of yourself, coaching yourself into getting yourself back up on your feet again. Even though you're going to feel like crap physically, emotionally, psychologically, you're just going to be, a raw nerve for the next 6 to 9 months, possibly even the next few years, because you're still going to have to go through the divorce process, going into the court, dealing with the anxiety, the depression that comes with it, the what if scenarios, the how do I get past this? Am I going to make it? Oh my God. I've been there. I've had,
for sure.
And so that's where I take it into, hey, I've been there. I know what's going on. You'll get past this.
I feel that. I know it was a good 3 or 4 years that I went through some really, really hard times, some unemployment, some depression, where, barely knew how to take care of myself, watched my business fall apart, eventually went through a bankruptcy and lost my house. So I know, and it would have been great to have an organization like yours to, take me under their wing and help me out going through all that. I might have been stubborn and not wanted help, but there certainly wasn't anybody there offering it either. And I appreciate everything that you do. I appreciate everything, that you shared with us tonight. The work that we've done together in the past and are going to do in the future. We really, really need guys like you out there and other volunteers to come forward and help us with this, because it's such a big problem. And we need to provide that support out there. And there's so much that we can do, not only to help the dads, but to help the moms and the kids. This is ultimately for them, because they're the ones that are really going to suffer the most. And then the cycle is going to repeat itself in the next generation. So it's not just about us, it's about them, and it's about our grandkids. So with that, I think our time is run over pretty good. So I think we should probably wrap it up. But is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience before we end for tonight?
Yeah, basically. Thanks, Harley. In the comments, Harley just posted our Facebook page for A Place for Father. We do have a closed group called A Place for Father. And so basically, that's our little group of fathers that can sit there and kind of bounce ideas off of each other of what they're going through in their court cases and stuff like that. I'm very, very strict on who gets brought into it, because I want this to be a safe place, a confidential place for them. So I vet the people that are in this group, because we don't want anyone coming in there that's going to be causing a bunch of chaos, because we're all going through this together, and we really don't need somebody to come in there and start causing problems, especially, exes trying to get in and stuff like that. I mean, basically it's a very, very closed group. But in the meantime, if you want to join it and you have questions, you can send us you can message us on our Facebook page, and we'll get to you as soon as possible with any help or anything that you request. We don't deal with just fathers here in Washington State. We've also been helping other fathers in different states. I mean, we have a couple of fathers in Georgia on the East Coast that we're helping out with learning what their court rules are like. So we're evolving in this process too. It's not not just this is what you got to do. This is what you got to do. In this area, we're actually moving into different states and helping out these fathers that are just coming to us because they don't know where else to go. I mean, you've got fathers' rights movement. You've got the Parentalink. There's us. There is a bunch of resources out there for fathers to be able to vent and get tips and ideas and things that they can use in their court cases. It's just you got to kind of look for them a little bit. In the meantime, we've got the resources and we can point people in the direction here locally, but that's about as far as we can get. And so if it's from out of state, we try to help kind of on a case by case basis, see what we can do to assist them a little bit.
Absolutely. Well, once again, I want to thank you for everything that you've shared, everything that you do, everything that Harley helps with as well. You guys have been great. I'm looking forward to continuing to work with you in the future. Got a lot of great ideas. The Court Watcher program that we've talked about, expanding things beyond Whatcom. You're already helping some fathers in other parts of the country. We need to continue to build this momentum, this help, these support networks that we have. There's a lot of moms out there that need a lot of help too, which we also focus on. And just keep doing what you do. And thank you once again for everybody out there that's struggling through child custody situations and who's being alienated from their child. We feel for you. We understand what you're going through, and we're here to support you. So with that, I'm going to bid everyone a good night. Thank you once again, sir. And thank you for everyone who joined us, and look forward to our next live stream here, probably coming up pretty soon. Everybody have a great night.
All right. Stay safe.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.